Welcome to the first of a series of videos and blog posts about emerging findings from the Inspiration Research Project that you've been helping me with. Most of you who are seeing this video, at least at this stage, are people who have participated by letting me interview you about your experiences of inspiration. And so first of all, thank you very much. I've been having the time of my life hearing your stories and seeing what there is to see about inspiration through them. To date, I've interviewed about 40 people or so over the course of about 6 months. People from all kinds of different backgrounds, different ages, from different countries, different religious and spiritual traditions. Some people who think of themselves as inspired, some who others think of as inspired, some who don't think of themselves as very inspired at all. All the interviews have been recorded and transcribed. Generally speaking, they all began with the question, what comes to mind when you hear the phrase an inspired life? And then went wherever they went from there, depending on the responses that came to that question, or the things that came to mind. I've been collecting a series of concepts, ideas, aspects of the inspiration process that have come out of those stories into a huge digital spreadsheet and digital bulletin board. I don't know what a digital spreadsheet is. I think all spreadsheets might be digital. Maybe there were paper ones back in the day. Let me know if there were. And I've also been doing some like sketches and, also digital to kind of capture and clarify some of the concepts. And then re-going through all of those stories that are now transcribed and recorded to test the different aspects of the stories against those concepts, as well as find out if there are things that maybe I missed or new questions that are worth exploring that come out of that. And I'm continuing to interview people as well, just on a much less frequent basis at this point. So anyway, the purpose of these emerging findings videos and blogs is just to give those of you who have participated a window into some of what's been emerging from the research you've helped make possible. There are 6 emerging findings at this point that I want to unpack just a little bit, or at least give like a teaser into. But before I do that, I want to mention one idea, which is the difference between normal inspiration events and differentiating inspiration events. Some of the experiences of inspiration that people have are just, they're normal. They happen maybe multiple times a day, multiple times a week, a month, and they might be forgotten or lost in memory, at least because of new ones that come along. Maybe if you wanted to think about it, you could remember, oh yeah, yesterday this inspired me, or 2 days ago. But generally speaking, they may not be things you continue to think about or that have had a huge impact on your life, except in like an accumulating way. But differentiating inspiration events, although when they happen, they might be identical to a normal inspiration event, in the course of one's life or one's story, they become really significant. People will often talk about their lives before a differentiating inspiration event and after, because of some significant shift or change that happened. That change might be internal. They feel like a different person, or they conceive of themselves differently as a result of it. Or maybe it's more external, like something changed in their life. They took some action, moved someplace, took a new career, left something they were doing before. Or it could be that the world around them responded in such a significant way to the thing they did, either in a way they experienced positively or negatively, pleasurably or painfully in the time, but as a result, their life took a turn. And it was a differentiating event. They became more and more something else than they were before. Their life took on a new character as a result of the event. So anyway, in these stories that I'll be telling, or concepts that I'll be explaining, as I describe inspiration, I'll primarily be describing it through the lens of differentiating inspiration events, in part because those are the primary stories that people shared with me for reasons that are probably obvious. They stand out more, or perhaps they were more intense when they happened. and also in part just because there's a little more clarity around those events because they're not as lost to memory, and so they're better for unpacking. But I should say that the general process is the same, whether we're talking about differentiating inspiration events or normal inspiration events. Just some of the language we might use around them is different because of the impact they have, or again, potentially the intensity of the experience. Okay, all that said, 6 findings that we'll be exploring in this series, just name them at this point. The first is the idea of inspiration as a catalyst. What does it mean for inspiration to catalyze something? What is it catalyzing? What comes out of that catalytic reaction? The second is the idea of unsettledness as something that precedes inspiration, especially differentiating inspiration events. There's a continuum of that unsettledness between restlessness or disquiet to more distress, anger, that sort of thing. I'm going to be talking about wakeful sensitivity and the role it plays in inspiration. For example, when disruption happens in life and it kind of awakens you to paying attention to things you weren't paying attention to before, or you're intentionally through curiosity or exposing yourself to new things or looking at purpose or exploring beauty, what impact does that have on inspiration? Be talking about the idea of inspiration as an architect and midwife of joy. What does it mean for inspiration to be an architect? What does it mean that inspiration is experienced as a midwife? What's it giving birth to? How is it helping with that process? Talk about the idea of a counterpart to inspiration that's antagonistic, that's working at a very different purpose or for a different end than inspiration is, although it still seems to function as a catalyst. What is that? How does it work? What kind of system is it taking place in? How do you distinguish that antagonistic counterpart of inspiration with inspiration itself? And then finally, talking about this emerging love story or epic drama that inspiration seems to play a central role in, to be a main character in. One of the questions at the outset of the research for me was, what is inspiration up to? The research I'd seen on inspiration previously wasn't, to me, very inspiring, which often means we're lacking a story, because inspiration and meaning tend to derive from stories, from an understanding of what it's doing that's going from here to there, and really being excited about there, and being aware of like the challenge and the struggle in the midst of the how it's happening. Anyway, all that to say, there seems to be a really cool story about inspiration to me that's very inspiring, that reveals a little bit about what inspiration is up to and how we can cooperate with it. So I'll touch on that in the last post or video of this series. So anyway, thank you so much for your help in this process. It's been incredibly helpful and inspiring and energizing, and I'm looking forward to what's next. And for those of you who are interested in joining me in that, I have all kinds of ways to help that I'll be explaining as well. So anyway, again, thank you.